My mother-in-law, Megan, spent years mocking my humble job while praising her son, Stephen, as the family tycoon. At our anniversary dinner, she humiliated me one time too many, comparing me to his millionaire ex. She didn't know I was the secret high earner funding their entire illusion. I spoke 4 words, and the Bank of Daisy closed forever. This is where the mask finally slips, and the reality of their perfect life comes crashing down. Make sure you're subscribed to see how deep the deception really goes. We're always curious. Have you ever had to hide your success to protect someone else's ego? Let us know in the comments. The restaurant was one of those places where the lighting was deliberately dim, the menus had no prices, and the waiters moved with the silent, practiced grace of predatory cats. It was the kind of establishment my husband, Stephen, loved to be seen in, and the kind of place his mother, Megan, insisted was the bare minimum for people of our supposed station. We were celebrating our 5th wedding anniversary, though celebrating felt like a generous word for what was happening. It felt more like a performance review where I was failing every metric. Megan sat across from me, swirling her Pinot Noir, a bottle that cost more than my first car, with a look of practiced disdain. She was a woman who wore her judgment like designer perfume. It arrived before she did and lingered long after she left. She was dressed in a sharp, charcoal blazer that probably cost 3 grand, her silver hair coiffed into an immobile helmet of perfection. "The ambience is acceptable," Megan murmured, glancing around the room with a critical squint. "Though the service is a tad slow tonight. Stephen, darling, you really must speak to the manager. People like us shouldn't be kept waiting for bread." "I'll handle it, Mom," Stephen said, puffing out his chest. He was wearing his best navy suit, the one I had picked up from the dry cleaners yesterday because he was too busy with meetings. "They know who I am here." They didn't know who he was. They knew the credit card on file, which bore his name but was linked to a joint account that I silently replenished every month. But Stephen loved the fantasy. He loved playing the role of the magnate, the provider, the successful entrepreneur. And for 5 years, I had let him. I had made myself small so he could feel big. "So, Daisy," Megan said, turning her gaze on me. It was like a physical weight settling on my shoulders. "Stephen tells me you're still working at that. What is it? That little data firm." "I'm a lead forensic data architect, Megan," I said, keeping my voice even. I cut a piece of my steak, focusing on the texture of the meat rather than the rising heat in my cheeks. Megan laughed, a tinkling, dismissive sound that grated on my nerves. "Right, computers. It's quaint, really. It's cute how you try so hard on that salary. It keeps you busy, I suppose. Keeps you out of Stephen's hair while he's closing the real deals." Stephen chuckled nervously, taking a sip of his wine. He didn't look at me. He never looked at me when she was tearing me down. He just let it happen, a passive participant in my humiliation. "Actually," Megan continued, leaning in as if sharing a conspiracy, "I ran into Jessica the other day. You remember Jessica, don't you, Stephen, the millionaire? The one who started that biotech firm." Stephen's ears turned pink. "Mom, not now." "Oh, don't be shy, darling," Megan waved a hand. "Jessica looked phenomenal, just radiated success. She asked about you, Stephen. I honestly think she still regrets letting you go. She understands the pressures of high-level business. Unlike some people who just punch a clock." She looked pointedly at me. The table went silent. The air grew thick and suffocating. The couple at the next table glanced over, having heard the volume of her voice. "Jessica just bought a villa in Tuscany," Megan added, twisting the knife. "Cash, can you imagine? My son could have married Jessica. You know, the millionaire, instead of well." She gestured vaguely at me, as if I were a stain on the tablecloth. "But I suppose we make do with what we have." Stephen laughed. That was the moment. It wasn't Megan's cruelty, I was used to that. It was Stephen's laugh. It was a weak, ingratiating sound, a betrayal wrapped in a chuckle. He was laughing along with her mockery of the woman who paid his mortgage, his car lease, and the very suit he was wearing. He was laughing at the salary that had cleared his gambling debts 2 years ago. Something inside me, a tension cable that had been pulled tight for 5 years finally snapped. The vibration of it hummed through my entire body. The nausea of the illness I had been fighting off all week suddenly vanished, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I set down my fork. The metal clinked sharply against the fine china. I picked up my napkin, dabbed my mouth, and ate it neatly on the table. Then, I lifted my head and looked directly at my husband. "Stephen," I said softly. "What?" he asked, his smile faltering as he saw the look in my eyes. "Don't be so sensitive, Daisy. Mom's just joking." "No," I said, "she's not, and neither am I." I turned my gaze to Megan. She was smiling over the rim of her glass, expecting me to shrink away, to apologize for existing, as I always did. "You think it's cute that I try so hard?" I asked, my voice gaining strength, projecting just enough for the eavesdropping table nearby to hear. "You think Jessica is the only millionaire Stephen could have married?" Megan lowered her glass, a frown creasing her forehead. "Excuse me, what are you babbling about?" I looked back at Stephen. He looked terrified. He knew. Deep down, he knew the delicate ecosystem of lies we lived in, and he saw the match in my hand. "I'm done, Stephen," I said. "I'm done pretending." "Pretending what?" Megan snapped. "That you belong at this table." I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "No, Megan, pretending that your son isn't unemployed. Pretending that he's paid for a single dinner in the last 3 years." "Daisy," Stephen hissed, reaching for my arm. I pulled away. I looked Megan dead in the eye. "You want to know about money? You want to talk about millionaires?" I leaned forward, the candlelight dancing in my eyes, and delivered the 4 words that would shatter their reality forever. "I pay for everything." Megan's hand jerked. The stem of her wine glass slipped from her manicured fingers. It hit the table, shattering instantly. Red wine exploded outward, soaking the white tablecloth, splashing onto Stephen's expensive suit, and dripping onto Megan's lap. The restaurant went silent. "The betrayal," I whispered, watching the wine spread like a bloodstain, "was thinking you could bite the hand that feeds you and not get starved." The silence that followed the shattering of the wine glass was absolute. For a few seconds, the only sound in the restaurant was the rhythmic drip-drip-drip of expensive Pinot Noir falling from the edge of the table onto the plush carpet. Megan sat frozen, her mouth slightly open, looking down at the dark red stain spreading across her charcoal blazer. The arrogance had been wiped from her face, replaced by a look of sheer, uncomprehending shock. It wasn't just the mess, it was the insubordination. The idea that I, the mouse, the salary earner, had spoken back to her was unfathomable. Stephen was the first to move. He jumped up, dabbing frantically at his suit with a napkin, his face a mask of panic and rage. "Daisy, what the hell is wrong with you? Look what you did." "I didn't drop the glass, Stephen," I said calmly, remaining seated. I felt a strange, detached lightness as if I were floating above the scene. "Your mother did." "You caused a scene," Megan screeched, finally finding her voice. She stood up, shaking her hands as if the wine were acid. "You clumsy, spiteful little, how dare you speak to me like that? You pay for everything. What a delusion. My son is a vice president." I watched them, the 2 people I had dedicated my life to pleasing, and I felt nothing but a hollow ache where my love used to be. "Stephen is a vice president of a shell company that hasn't generated revenue in 18 months, Megan. He works from a home office that I furnished, on a laptop I bought, using Wi-Fi I pay for." "Shut up," Stephen roared, slamming his hand on the table. A waiter materialized instantly, looking alarmed. "Sir, is everything all right?" the waiter asked, eyeing the mess. "We're leaving," Stephen snapped. He glared at me. "Give me the card, Daisy." I looked at him. The audacity was breathtaking. Even in the middle of his humiliation, his instinct was to demand the tool of his survival. "No," I said simply. "What?" Stephen blinked, as if I spoke a foreign language. I said no. "If you want to leave, you pay the bill. You're the big, successful businessman, right? Surely you have $300 for dinner." Stephen turned pale. He patted his pockets, pulling out a sleek leather wallet, a gift from me last Christmas. He opened it. I knew exactly what was inside: a driver's license, a gym membership card he never used, and 2 credit cards. Both of those cards were supplementary cards linked to my primary account. I left my main card in the other jacket, he stammered, lying to his mother, lying to the waiter, lying to himself. Megan looked at him, confusion warring with her ingrained belief in his superiority. Stephen, just pay the man and let's get out of here. This woman has lost her mind. I can't, Mom, Stephen whispered, his voice cracking. I stood up slowly. My legs felt a little shaky. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving me with the physical toll of the stress. I opened my purse, took out $200 in cash, my personal emergency cash, and placed it on the table near the waiter, bypassing Stephen entirely. This is for the wine and the tablecloth, I told the waiter. The rest of the bill is theirs. I turned and walked toward the exit. Daisy, get back here, Stephen shouted. You can't leave us here. How are we supposed to get home? Call Jessica, I said over my shoulder, not breaking stride. Maybe she'll send a limo. I walked out into the cool night air, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't have a car. Stephen had insisted we take the company car, my leased Mercedes, and he had the keys. I pulled out my phone and summoned a rideshare. As I waited on the curb, shivering slightly in my evening dress, my phone blew up. Text after text from Stephen. Pick up the phone. You are embarrassing me. Mom is having a panic attack. Come back and pay the bill now. I swiped the notifications away. I looked at the screen, at the background photo. It was a picture of Stephen and me from 3 years ago, smiling on a beach in Maui. I remembered that trip. I had worked 80-hour weeks for 3 months to afford it, coding late into the night while Stephen networked at golf courses. I had told everyone it was Stephen's bonus that paid for it. Why had I done it? I had bought into the traditional narrative. I wanted the strong husband, the provider. When Stephen's startup failed 5 years ago, I didn't want him to feel like a failure. So I covered for him. I told him to take his time, to find the right opportunity. I used my inheritance from my grandmother and my rapidly increasing salary as a high-level forensic accountant to patch the holes. But the patch had become the foundation, and the temporary help had become a permanent crutch. A sleek black sedan pulled up. I got in, sinking into the backseat. Rough night, the driver asked, eyeing me in the rearview mirror. You have no idea, I murmured. As the city lights blurred past the window, my mind raced. I knew what awaited me at home. Screaming, gaslighting, demands, they would try to spin this. They would try to make me the villain, the crazy hormonal wife who ruined the anniversary. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just a computer person, as Megan called me. I was a forensic accountant. My entire career was built on tracking assets, uncovering fraud, and documenting financial reality. I didn't just pay the bills, I had the receipts. I had 5 years of bank statements, tax returns, and property deeds. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I wasn't going home to fight. I was going home to prepare. The phone buzzed again, a voicemail from Megan. I didn't listen to it, but the transcription popped up on the screen. Megan, you ungrateful little leech. When Stephen divorces you, you'll be on the street. We're going to take you for everything you have. I stared at the words, a cold smile touching my lips. Everything I have, I whispered to the empty car. They thought the house, the cars, the investments were Stephen's because I let them believe it. They thought I was a passenger in their life. They didn't know I was the pilot, the mechanic, and the owner of the plane. And I was about to initiate a crash landing. The house was dark when I arrived. It was a beautiful property, a 4-bedroom, mid-century modern renovation in the hills with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Megan liked to tell her friends that Stephen had such an eye for real estate when he chose it. In reality, I had found it, I had negotiated the price, and my name was the only one on the deed. Stephen had bad credit due to a misunderstanding with a previous partner, so we agreed to keep the assets in my name to protect them. It was the one smart thing I had done, though at the time, I thought I was doing it for us. I walked into the foyer, the click of my heels echoing on the polished concrete floors. I felt like a stranger in my own home, the art on the walls chosen by Megan, the furniture selected by Megan, the color palette approved by Megan. I went straight to my home office. It was the smallest room in the house, tucked away behind the kitchen. Stephen called it Daisy's hobby room. His office was the master suite annex with the mahogany desk and the leather chair. I sat down at my triple monitor setup and woke the computer. The blue light washed over my face, familiar and comforting. This was my domain. Here, logic ruled. Numbers didn't lie. Numbers didn't mock you at dinner. I began to pull the files. I needed to understand exactly how I had let it get this bad. I opened the folder labeled Household Finances. I met Stephen 6 years ago at a tech conference. He was charming, charismatic, and seemingly successful. He had just sold a small app and was looking for his next venture. I was a senior analyst, making good money but socially awkward. He swept me off my feet. He made me feel seen. But the cracks appeared early. The sold app money dried up fast, faster than it should have. He claimed his funds were tied up in illiquid assets. So I paid for dinner. Then I paid for the vacation. Then I paid the rent. Then came Megan. Megan was a widow who had never worked a day in her life. She lived off a dwindling trust fund and the social capital of her late husband's name. She saw Stephen as her retirement plan. When we got married, she made it clear I was the support staff. Stephen needs a wife who understands his potential, she had told me on my wedding day, gripping my arm a little too tight. Don't burden him with domestic trivia. Let him soar. So I did. I took on the burden. When Stephen's second startup failed, I covered the debts so he wouldn't have to declare bankruptcy. When he wanted to get into real estate but couldn't pass the licensing exam, I hired him as a consultant for my own LLC so he could have a salary on paper. I looked at the spreadsheet on my screen. Stephen's monthly allowance, $4,000. Megan's assistance, $2,500. Mortgage, paid by Daisy, $6,200. Cars, paid by Daisy, $1,800. I scrolled down. The total over 5 years was staggering. I had poured nearly $750,000 into maintaining the fiction of Stephen's success. The front door slammed open downstairs. Daisy, Stephen's voice boomed, slurring slightly. He was drunk. Where are you? I heard the clatter of heels. Megan was with him. Of course she was. She's hiding, Megan sneered, her voice echoing up the stairs. Like a rat. Show yourself, you vicious little girl. I didn't move. I hit print on the document labeled Asset Summary. They burst into my office a moment later. Stephen looked disheveled, his tie undone, wine stains still dark on his shirt. Megan had cleaned up, but her eyes were wild with fury. There she is, Stephen spat, bracing himself against the doorframe. Sitting at her little computer. You humiliated us, Megan hissed, stepping into the room. The space was too small for her ego. She instantly made it feel claustrophobic. We had to call a taxi, like peasants. Stephen's cards were declined, both of them. Because I canceled them, I said, not looking up from the screen. You what? Stephen blinked, the reality penetrating his drunken haze. I canceled the supplementary cards, Stephen, and I froze the joint checking account. You can't do that, Stephen yelled, stumbling forward. That's my money. Is it? I swiveled my chair around to face them. Name one deposit you've made in the last 12 months, just one. Stephen opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at his mother for help. Megan stepped in, chest heaving. This is financial abuse. You are controlling him with money. It's disgusting. Stephen, call the police. Call a lawyer. She's stealing from you. I'm stealing from him, I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Megan, do you know who pays for your condo, the HOA fees, the lease on your Lexus? Stephen takes care of me, Megan said haughtily, as a good son should. Stephen writes the checks, I corrected her. But the money comes from my payroll. Every single cent you have spent in the last 5 years came from my cute little job. Liar, Megan spat. You're just a jealous, insecure little accountant. You're trying to emasculate him because you know he's too good for you. You know Jessica would never. Jessica, I slammed my hand on the desk, making them both jump. Let's talk about Jessica. The millionaire, you love to throw her in my face. Do you know why Jessica left Stephen? Because she was intimidated by his ambition, Megan cried. No, I said, my voice dropping to a deadly calm. I did some digging a few years ago. Curiosity. Jessica left him because he stole $20,000 from her to fund a gambling habit. Stephen's face went gray. You know about that. I know everything, Stephen. I'm a forensic accountant. Secrets are my business. Megan looked between us, a flicker of doubt finally crossing her face. Gambling? Stephen doesn't gamble. Tell her, Stephen, I said, leaning back. Tell her about the trip to Vegas 3 years ago, the business conference. The one that cost me 50 grand to bail you out of. Stephen stared at the floor. It was an investment strategy that went wrong. An investment strategy at a blackjack table, I said. Megan looked at her son, then back at me. Her eyes narrowed. She wasn't processing the betrayal of her son, she was calculating the threat to her lifestyle. I don't care what lies you spin, Megan said, regaining her composure. This marriage is over. Stephen, you are divorcing her, and we are taking half. No, more than half. We'll take the house, the savings, everything. You'll regret the day you tried to cut us off. She grabbed Stephen's arm. Come on, Stephen, pack a bag, you're staying with me tonight. We'll call the lawyers in the morning. Stephen hesitated, looking at me with sad, puppy dog eyes, the look that used to work. Daisy, baby, just apologize, fix the cards, we can talk about this. Go with your mother, Stephen, I said coldly. Fine, he flared up again, his ego bruising. You'll see, you'll be begging me to come back. They stormed out. I heard Stephen banging around in the bedroom, throwing things into a suitcase. Then the front door slammed again. The silence returned, but this time it wasn't heavy, it was liberating. I turned back to my computer. They were going to call lawyers. They were going to try to take half. I pulled up the file for the house deed. Owner, Daisy R. Miller, sole and separate property. I pulled up the prenuptial agreement. A document Stephen had signed willingly because, at the time, he thought his imaginary millions needed protecting from me. I smiled. Let them call the lawyers, I whispered. I'll be waiting. The next morning, I didn't go to the office. I worked from home, but not on my employer's dime. I was working on my own defense. My first call was to my bank. I formally removed Stephen's authorization from every account. I changed passwords, PINs, and security questions. The financial severance was brutal and immediate. My second call was to a locksmith. By noon, the locks on the house were changed. My third call was to Sarah, a shark of a divorce attorney I had met through work. We had collaborated on a fraud case involving a CEO hiding assets from his wife. Sarah was terrifying in court, and I liked her immensely. Daisy, Sarah said when I walked into her glass-walled office later that afternoon. I've been waiting for this call for 2 years. 2 years, I sat down, placing a heavy binder on her desk. I saw the way he talked to you at the firm's Christmas party, Sarah said, opening the binder. I knew it was only a matter of time. What triggered it? He laughed, I said. His mother insulted me, humiliated me, and he laughed. Sarah nodded slowly. That'll do it. Okay, let's see what we have. She flipped through the documents I had prepared. The detailed ledger of every expense, the proof of funds, the mortgage payments, the emails where Stephen acknowledged the debts I paid for him, the prenuptial agreement. Sarah let out a low whistle. Daisy, this is comprehensive. You've tracked every latte. It's what I do, I said. This prenup is ironclad, Sarah noted, tapping the paper. He waived rights to any assets acquired in your name and vice versa. He thought he was protecting his future empire. The irony is delicious. Megan threatened to take the house, I said. Megan can try, Sarah smirked. But legally, she's a stranger to this marriage. And Stephen is a dependent. Actually, looking at these transfers to his mother, we might have a case for clawing some of that back. These aren't marital expenses. These are unauthorized gifts of marital funds if you didn't sign off on them explicitly. I just want them out of my life, Sarah. I want a clean break. We can get you a clean break, Sarah said, but they're going to fight, people like that. When you cut off the supply, they get desperate. Expect escalation. She was right. The escalation began before I even left her office. My phone buzzed, a notification from our home security system. Motion detected, front porch. I opened the app and watched the live feed. Megan and Stephen were standing at the front door. Stephen was trying his key. It didn't turn. He tried again, jiggling it violently. "It's not working," Stephen shouted at the door. Megan stepped into the frame, her face distorted by the fisheye lens. She began pounding on the door with her fist. "Daisy, open this door. This is illegal. You can't lock him out of his own house." I pressed the microphone button on the app. "It's not his house, Megan," I said, my voice projecting from the doorbell speaker. They both jumped. Megan glared at the camera. "You witch, we have rights, he has squatter's rights." "He's not a squatter, he's a husband who walked out," I said calmly. "And since his name isn't on the deed or the lease, he has no right of entry without my permission. You can contact my lawyer, Sarah Jenkins. She'll be serving Stephen with divorce papers tomorrow." "Divorce?" Stephen looked at the camera, his face crumbling. "Daisy, don't do this. It was just an argument. We can fix this." "Fix it," Megan interrupted, slapping Stephen on the arm. "Don't you dare beg her. She's bluffing. She needs you. Who else would want her?" "I'm blocking this number after this call," I said. "Do not come back to my property, or I will call the police for trespassing." I cut the feed. My heart was racing, but the fear was different now. It wasn't the fear of their judgment. It was the adrenaline of the hunt. I had been the prey for so long, I had forgotten that I was the one with the teeth. I spent the rest of the day digging deeper. I needed to know if there were any other surprises. I accessed Stephen's email. He had foolishly saved his password on my browser years ago. I searched for keywords: Jessica, gambling, loan, mom. I found a thread between Stephen and Megan from 3 days ago. "Megan, have you asked her about the bonus yet? My bathroom renovation is stalled. I need that check. Stephen, I'm working on it. She's been tight with money lately. Suspicious. Megan, just tell her the car needs repairs, or that your business has a tax bill. She's gullible. She'll pay. Stephen, yeah, she always does." I stared at the screen, a single tear tracking down my cheek. She always does. That was my legacy to them. The ATM, the fool. I took a screenshot. I added it to the evidence folder. Then I found something else, an email from a jewelry store. Subject: appraisal for diamond ring. I opened it. It was an appraisal for my grandmother's engagement ring, the one I kept in the safe in the master closet. The one I had worn on my wedding day. Estimated value: $45,000. The date was from 2 weeks ago. A cold dread pooled in my stomach. Stephen didn't have the combination to that safe, or at least I thought he didn't. I raced home. I didn't care if they were lurking nearby. I ran upstairs to the master closet and pulled away the false panel behind the shoe rack. The safe was there. I punched in the code. The door swung open. Empty. My grandmother's ring, my emergency cash stash, my passport. Gone. I sank to the floor, the betrayal hitting me in a fresh, agonizing wave. It wasn't just money. He had stolen my history. He had stolen my safety net. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello." "Daisy," a female voice, confident, sharp. "Yes." "This is Jessica, Steven's ex." I froze. "Jessica, why are you calling me?" "Megan called me," Jessica said. "She's trying to sell me a ring, a vintage diamond ring. She said it's a family heirloom she wants to keep in the circle since I'm practically family." I gripped the phone. "She's trying to sell you my grandmother's ring." "I thought it might be yours," Jessica said dryly. "Megan isn't exactly known for her own jewelry collection. Listen, Daisy, I know we've never met and Megan likes to pit us against each other, but I despise that woman. And I know what Steven is." "He stole it," I whispered. "He emptied my safe." "I figured," Jessica said. "Here's the deal. I told her I'm interested. I told her to meet me tomorrow at noon at the bistro downtown to make the exchange. She wants cash." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," Jessica said, her voice softening, "Steven stole from me too, and I didn't get the chance to nail him for it. I want to help you catch them." I stood up, wiping my eyes. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a burning, cold fury. "Okay," I said, "I'll be there." The bistro downtown was crowded with the lunch rush, businessmen in suits, ladies who lunch, and tourists. It was the perfect stage. I arrived at 11:45 a.m., wearing dark sunglasses and a scarf, sitting in a booth near the back that Jessica had reserved for a friend. From my vantage point, I had a clear view of table 6, right in the center of the room. Jessica arrived at 11:55. She was everything Megan said she was: tall, striking, dressed in a power suit that cost more than my car. But as she sat down, she caught my eye across the room and gave a subtle, grim nod. There was no rivalry here, just two women who had survived the same parasite. At 12:00 sharp, Megan and Steven walked in. They looked ragged. They were wearing the same clothes as yesterday. Steven looked hungover, his eyes darting around nervously. Megan, however, marched in with her head held high, clutching her purse tightly against her side. They sat opposite Jessica. I couldn't hear them clearly, but I had my phone recording, hoping to pick up snippets. I watched the body language. Megan was talking fast, smiling that fake, saccharine smile. She gestured to Steven, who looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Jessica sat coolly, listening, nodding occasionally. Then Megan reached into her purse. She pulled out a small velvet pouch. She tipped it onto the table. Even from 20 feet away, I saw the sparkle. My grandmother's ring. A 1920s Art Deco piece, platinum and diamond. Unique, mistakable. Megan pushed it toward Jessica. Jessica picked it up, examining it. She said something. Megan laughed. Steven wiped sweat from his forehead. Jessica reached into her bag and pulled out a thick white envelope. The cash. That was my cue. I stood up, removed my sunglasses, and walked toward table 6. My heels clicked rhythmically on the hardwood. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" I said loudly as I approached the table. Steven's head snapped up. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. "Daisy." Megan froze, her hand halfway to the envelope. "That ring," I continued, stopping right at the edge of their table. "It survived the Great Depression. It survived World War II. It was supposed to be passed down to my daughter. But instead, it ended up in the sweaty hands of a thief and his fence." "Daisy, wait," Steven stammered, standing up. We were just getting it appraised, for insurance." "With a cash exchange?" Jessica asked, raising an eyebrow. She tossed the envelope onto the table. It slid open, revealing stacks of plain paper cut to the size of bills. Megan asked for $30,000 in cash, unmarked. Megan gasped, realizing the trap. She snatched the ring back, clutching it in her fist. "You set us up, you conspired with her," she glared at Jessica. "I thought you were a friend. I thought you still loved Steven." "I loathe Steven," Jessica said pleasantly. "He's a leech, and you're the one who attached him." "Give me the ring, Megan," I said, holding out my hand. "No," Megan shrieked. "This is compensation for the distress you've caused, for kicking my son out of his home." The restaurant had gone quiet again. People were watching. Phones were out. "That ring is stolen property," I said, my voice projecting. I filed a police report this morning for grand larceny, and since the value is over $10,000, it's a felony. Now, Stephen took it from the safe, which makes him the thief. But you, I pointed at Megan. You are currently in possession of stolen goods and attempting to sell them. That makes you an accessory, or maybe just a fence. Police, Stephen squeaked. You called the police on me. I called the police on a burglar, I said. I didn't know it was you until I saw the security logs, but now that I know, well, the law is the law. You wouldn't, Megan sneered, though her hand was trembling. You don't have the guts. You love him too much. I loved the man I thought he was, I said. I don't know who this is. I pulled out my phone. Officer, I said into the receiver. I had dialed 911 as I walked up. Yes, I'm at the bistro. I've located the stolen item and the suspects. They are at table 6. Megan's eyes went wide. She looked at the door. She looked at the ring. Run, Stephen, she screamed. It was absurd. It was pathetic. Stephen hesitated, looking between the back exit and his mother. Don't be an idiot, Stephen, I said tiredly. If you run, you just add resisting arrest to the list. Megan didn't wait for him. She shoved the ring into her pocket and bolted for the door. But she wasn't fast enough. 2 uniformed officers were already walking in, guided by the manager. Ma'am, stop, one officer commanded. Megan skidded to a halt, trapped between the hostess stand and the cops. She turned back to us, her face a mask of pure hatred. This is all your fault, she screamed at me, pointing a shaking finger. You ruined his life, you ruined everything. No, Megan, I said, watching the officers approach her. I just stopped paying for it. The scene at the bistro was the talk of the town, or at least, the talk of Megan's social circle, which was effectively her entire world. Megan was arrested for possession of stolen property and attempted fencing. Stephen wasn't arrested on the spot. I declined to press charges against him right there, strategically. I wanted leverage for the divorce. But the victory was short-lived. Megan made bail within hours, paid for by a loan from one of her dwindling list of friends. And the moment she was out, she went on the offensive. My lawyer, Sarah, called me 2 days later. They've filed a motion, Sarah said, her voice tight. They're claiming you entrapment regarding the ring, and, Daisy, this is rich, they're claiming you abused Stephen financially. They say you forced him to sign the prenup under duress and that you controlled his access to funds to isolate him. That's insanity, I said, pacing my living room. I have emails of him begging for money. I know, Sarah said, but they're muddying the waters. They're trying to drag this out, force a settlement. Megan is telling everyone who will listen that you're an unstable, vindictive shrew who framed her. She's posted about it on Facebook. She's calling your employer. My blood ran cold. She called my work. Yes, she tried to file an ethics complaint, claiming you used company resources to hack her son's email. I didn't, I said quickly. He saved the password. I believe you, but Daisy, she's going for the scorched earth policy. We need to bury them. We need something that proves, without a doubt, the pattern of fraud, not just the ring. We need the big picture. I knew she was right. The ring was a flashy incident, but it could be spun as a family dispute. I needed to prove that Stephen and Megan were systemic grifters. I went back to the data. I dug into the business expenses I had reimbursed Stephen for over the years. LLC filings, consultants, marketing fees. I started cross-referencing the vendors. Apex, Marketing Solutions, $4,500 month. Triton Consulting, $3,000 month. I looked up the addresses of these businesses. Apex Marketing was registered to a PO box in a strip mall 3 towns over. Triton Consulting was registered to a residential address. I pulled up Google Street View for the Triton address. It was a rundown bungalow. I recognized the car in the driveway. It was Megan's sister's house, Aunt Linda. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled the bank records for the checks I had written to Triton Consulting. They were endorsed on the back. I zoomed in on the digital scan of the signature. It was messy, illegible, but the account number it was deposited into. I ran a trace. I couldn't legally access the full account details of a stranger, but I could see the routing number. It matched the bank where Megan held her personal account. I sat back stunned. Stephen hadn't just been wasting money on bad business services. He had been funneling my money directly to his mother under fake company names. Apex Marketing and Triton Consulting didn't exist. They were just Megan. I did the math. Over 4 years, Triton Consulting had billed me $144,000. This wasn't just grifting, this was wire fraud, this was embezzlement. I called Sarah. "I have it," I said. "I know where the money went. They were laundering it." "Send it to me," Sarah said, her voice sharp. "Send me everything. If we can prove this, Megan isn't just looking at a slap on the wrist for the ring. She's looking at prison time for fraud, and Stephen is looking at being an accomplice." "There's more," I said. "I want to offer them a deal." "A deal? Daisy, we have them by the throat." "I know," I said, "but I want this over. I want a public confession. I want everyone to know, and I know exactly where to get it." "Where?" "The charity gala next Saturday," I said. "Megan is the co-chair. It's the highlight of her year. She wouldn't miss it for the world, even out on bail. She'll try to play the victim there." "And you want to go?" "I want to go," I said, "and I want to bring the evidence." The annual Children's Hospital Gala was the event of the season. It was a black-tie affair held in the grand ballroom of the city's historic hotel. Megan had built her entire social identity around this event. She was the philanthropist, the grand dame. I walked in wearing a dress I had bought for myself, a stunning emerald green gown that made me feel like a warrior. I had Jessica by my side. Her presence was my shield. No one would dare throw me out with the millionaire Jessica on my arm. The room was buzzing. Megan was on the stage, clutching the microphone, looking surprisingly composed for a woman facing felony charges. She was playing the martyr perfectly. And despite the personal attacks and the horrific misunderstandings my family has suffered recently, Megan was saying, her voice trembling theatrically, we remain committed to this cause. Because charity starts in the heart, even when others try to break it. A smattering of sympathetic applause. Stephen stood off to the side, looking miserable in a rented tux. I walked straight toward the stage. Jessica stayed at the foot of the stairs, crossing her arms. Megan saw me coming, her eyes widened. She gripped the mic. "Security, security, please remove this woman. She is harassing me." The room went silent. 2 security guards started moving toward me. "I'm a platinum donor, Megan," I said, my voice projecting clearly without a mic. "I paid for the centerpieces you're standing next to. I have every right to be here." I stepped up onto the stage. The guards hesitated. "Get off," Megan hissed, covering the mic. "You are ruining everything." "You ruined it yourself when you stole from me," I said. I turned to the audience. I saw faces I recognized, neighbors, business owners, people Megan had lied to for years. "Megan claims I'm financially abusing her son," I announced. The crowd murmured. "She claims I'm the villain, but I think the donors here deserve to know where their money might be going if they trust this woman." I pulled a flash drive from my purse and walked over to the AV technician's laptop, which was driving the projector behind Megan. The kid manning it looked terrified. "Play the video," I said. "Don't you dare," Megan screamed, lunging for me. Stephen jumped onto the stage. "Daisy, stop, please." "Play it," I commanded. The screen behind Megan flickered. It wasn't a video. It was a slideshow of documents. Slide 1, the Triton Consulting invoices. Slide 2, the bank trace showing the money going into Megan's personal account. Slide 3, the total stolen, $144,000. Slide 4, the text messages between Stephen and Megan planning the theft of the ring. The room gasped. The murmurs turned into a roar of shock. "This is fake," Megan screamed, waving her arms at the screen. She photoshopped it, it's lies. It's not lies, Megan, I said. Into the mic, which I had plucked from the podium. It's forensic accounting, and it's already with the district attorney. I turned to Stephen. He was shrinking, looking like a child who had been caught breaking a window. Stephen, I said, my voice soft but amplified to the entire room. Look at them. Look at what she made you do. She made you steal from your wife to pay for her ego. Is this who you want to be? A criminal for her. Stephen looked at his mother, who was currently screaming at the AV tech to cut the feed. He looked at the audience, looking at him with pity and disgust. She told me, Stephen's voice cracked. She told me it was family money. She said you owed us. Shut up, Stephen, Megan shrieked. Don't say a word. No, Stephen yelled back, surprising everyone, including himself. No, Mom, you said Daisy wouldn't mind. You said she had plenty. You made me set up those fake companies. You idiot, Megan slapped him. A sharp, ringing slap that echoed through the microphone. The crowd went dead silent. Stephen held his cheek. He looked at his mother with a look of pure betrayal. I'm done, Stephen whispered. He turned to me. I'm sorry, Daisy. I'm so sorry. I'll sign the papers. I'll tell the police everything. Megan looked around, realizing she had lost. The facade had crumbled. The philanthropist mask lay shattered on the floor. You're all ungrateful, Megan spat at the crowd. I did everything for this family. The police, who had been called by the hotel manager due to the disturbance, were waiting at the bottom of the stage. Megan Miller, an officer said, we have a warrant for additional charges of wire fraud. You need to come with us. This time she didn't run. She slumped, defeated, as the handcuffs clicked. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. It was uncontested. Stephen kept his word. He signed everything. He didn't ask for alimony. He didn't ask for the house. In exchange for his cooperation in the fraud case against his mother, I agreed not to press charges against him personally for the theft of the ring, which we recovered, though he still faced probation for his role in the embezzlement scheme. Megan wasn't so lucky. With the evidence I provided and Stephen's testimony, she pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and grand larceny. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Her assets, what little she had left, were seized to pay restitution. The condo was sold. The Lexus was repossessed. Her social standing was obliterated. I stood on the balcony of my house, sipping coffee. The morning air was crisp. It had been a hard year. The legal battles, the stress, the dismantling of a life I thought was forever. But as I looked out over the city, I didn't feel lonely. I felt light. My phone buzzed, a text from Jessica. Jessica, brunch at 11? I'm bringing the champagne. Also, I have a friend who needs a forensic accountant for a merger. Big job, interested. I smiled, Daisy, I'm in. I walked back inside, passing the empty spot on the wall where Megan's portrait used to hang. I had replaced it with a piece of abstract art I actually liked. I sat down at my desk, opening my laptop. The screen glowed with potential. My bank accounts were secure. My credit was pristine. My future was entirely my own. I had lost a husband, but I had found myself. And honestly, it was the most profitable trade of my life.